Thank you, Chrissy. Yes, interesting story. It's like Minions, I'm not sure they like to hear that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity to tell you the Azure Minerals story, in particular talking about the Andover Project. As Chrissy said, last year presented here was the Andover Nickel Project. Well, I've had to shorten that down to just the project now, because not only have we got nickel, copper and cobalt sulfide mineralisation and deposits there, but we've also now identified some very high-grade lithium-rich pegmatites on the ground. So this really has become a battery metals project. So corporately, the company's got about 390 million shares on issue, trading in the low 40-cent range, so a market cap of about 150, 160 million dollars as of today. We've got $23 million in the bank and no debt, so the company is in a very strong position financially at the moment to advance the projects. The major shareholder is up there is SQM, and the reason we've got that amount of capital in the bank is because SQM made a very solid investment into Azure back in beginning part of this year, and they invested $20 million for a 19.99% interest in the company in order to gain exposure to the Andover project, and in particular the lithium potential that we had identified at Andover. So the company has some very strong and supportive shareholders there. The Andover project is a 60-40 joint venture. 60% is owned by Azure, 40% is owned by that legendary prospector Mark Creasy, who has held this project for quite a few years prior to us becoming involved 3 years ago. So it's a great opportunity to work with Mark on this one. Andover is located in the northwestern part of Western Australia, in the West Pilbara. You can see there's a photograph there of the area. The project is shown there as a blue outline on the right-hand side of that image, and on the left-hand side of that photograph is the town of Karratha. So it's a 2-hour plane flight from Perth to Karratha, and then a half an hour's drive along the Northwest Coastal Highway, which goes through our project area. There's also a lot of other roads and tracks that go through there, as also there is high voltage power lines, gas pipelines, potable water pipelines, cell phone coverage, and there you couldn't get a better located project for both exploration and mine developments. And also right just on the other side of Karratha is the port of Dampier, which is a commercial port, multi-user port, so there's opportunities there if we go into production for exporting of product through Dampier port. So the Andover project has both nickel, copper and cobalt sulfides with 2 deposits identified, and also this potential for a large volume of high-grade lithium-rich pegmatites. It is important that we do acknowledge the traditional owners of the Andover land. It's important because it is their land. The local Aboriginal people live very close to the property, or even on the property in places. In order for us to work there, we have to have a very strong and positive relationship, which we have developed so far. And in order for us to actually do any earth moving, any surface disturbance at all, we need to have heritage approvals to be undertaken by the local traditional owners, and they do that for us, and that positive relationship is very strong, and it continues to gain strength at all times. The beauty about this project, or one of the great things, is that the rocks all stick out of the ground. There's nothing covering the rocks there, and those rocks contain mineralisation. So traditional exploration methodology of geologists walking across the ground, boots on the ground, taking samples, looking at the rocks, that is the way by which we've been able to identify not only the nickel and copper mineralisation, but also the lithium mineralisation in the pegmatites. So the photographs there on the left-hand side, there's some copper-rich mineralisation sticking out of the ground in an area which had never been identified previously, and yet it's only a couple of kilometres off the main highway. On the right-hand side, there's outcropping nickel-rich gossans there at surface. That particular photograph was taken from sitting on top of the Andover nickel deposit itself. And the central photograph is a snapshot of one of the outcropping pegmatites we have identified there, which is very high-grade lithium within those the spodumene minerals there. So this talk is mostly going to be focused on the lithium side of things. And this is a zoom in onto the project area. It's 108 square kilometres, shown inside 3 exploration licences, which are identified there in blue. The red shapes that you can see on there, they are the outcropping pegmatites. Our mapping and sampling, which we undertook through all of last year, has identified hundreds and hundreds of outcropping pegmatites, individual pegmatites. Now, a lot of those pegmatites will actually join together and form much larger bodies, and our mapping is confirming that that actually happens. So those pegmatites are all located in a single swarm, is what we call, or a pegmatite field, which is located inside that red triangle there. It's a wedge shape. It's about 9 kilometres long east-west by up to 5 kilometres wide on the eastern end of it. And all of the pegmatites we've identified so far are contained within that triangle. Individual pegmatites are up to 1.5 kilometres long and maybe up to 200 metres wide in places. So there's some certainly evidence, early stage evidence, that there's substantial volumes of pegmatites on the ground there. And our surface mapping and sampling, which we undertook last year, was very detailed, and it identifies a lot of high-grade lithium at surface in those pegmatites. So when you're getting 3, 4, up to 5% Li2O, lithium oxide, in outcrop, those are some of the highest sampling numbers that have been returned from any pegmatite or lithium project in Western Australia. And so we're currently drilling at the moment with 2 diamond drill rigs drilling in that rectangle that you can see up there. That's testing a couple of pegmatites called AP10, AP11, AP12. We're drilling in that area specifically because it's not necessarily our best target, but it's the only target for which we had heritage approval in place and environmental approval by which we could go in there and do the drilling. Since we started drilling there a couple of months ago, we've been able to undertake environmental surveys and heritage surveys, and over most of that red triangle through there, and those heritage approvals and environmental approvals are expected to be in place within the next week, so we'll be able to spread the drill rig out further from that little postage stamp that we're sitting on at the moment to actually go and drill test on the rest of that pegmatite field, which will mean that we'll be bringing more drill rigs into the project as well. So in addition to the 2 diamond rigs that are operating there now, we expect to have potentially up to another 4 drill rigs operating there by the middle of the year. This is a little zoom in on the area where we're currently drilling. As I mentioned, it's a bit like a postage stamp. It's only a few hundred metres across and to which we have access. So the holes have been collared in a very close proximity to each other, and then have been splayed out to the east and west and up and down to try and get some cross-cutting the stratigraphy and cross-cutting the pegmatites. The 4 holes there, which are shown in blue with the red hatches next to them, that's the first 4 holes where we intersected pegmatites, and contained within that there are zones of lithium-rich or spodumene-rich mineralisation, and that's the spodumene is the preferred lithium mineral that we're looking for. And there's a number of other black lines on there which give a schematic understanding of where we're currently drilling. We've been able to move the drill rigs closer to the outcrop, which is the red zone that you can see. The red zone up at the top there, that's the outcropping pegmatites in there. I think that's AP12, and so we've been drilling through that, and we've been able to get some very good intersections of pegmatite from surface to depth. So that's more of a schematic understanding of where we're actually operating. Once we get those approvals in place in the next few days, we'll be able to initiate the earth moving for the access tracks and the drill sites, and the drill rigs will be mobilised out into the greater areas. But this is what we've actually been looking at. On the right-hand side, there's a photograph there of a drill hole, some drill core from a hole 199, which we drilled late last year. We actually targeted a geophysical target that was considered prospective for nickel. There wasn't actually any nickel in there, in that particular target area, but there was a pegmatite that we intersected, and we got that mapped and logged and assayed, and there's a bit over 7 metres of 1.5% lithium oxide. So relatively narrow width, but it's certainly a very nice high-grade lithium result there in that first hole, albeit a fairly accidental intersection. But it gave us confidence that what we see at surface with the mineralised pegmatites is still going to be mineralised at depth. So on the left-hand side, there's a photograph of a more recent drill hole we put there. It's hole 202. There's a particular piece of drill core there which has got the white crystals of the spodumene, which is the mineral that contains the lithium, and the dark grey background is quartz. So it's basically spodumene and quartz together in that particular drill intersection, or both of those drill intersections. And the piece of drill core on the left-hand side, That particular piece of drill core was taken down to Perth and given to one of the laboratories, has some high-tech fancy equipment. It was given a hyperspectral analysis, which gives us the mineralogy of the minerals that are within that piece of drill core. So it's not an assay, but it gives an understanding of what the minerals are. And there are only really two significant minerals in that piece of drill core on the left-hand side. It was either spodumene and quartz. So one would expect that when we get the assays for those pieces of drill core, that they are going to be returning some very high grades of lithium. So where to from here for the company and for the rest of this year? Well, we believe that there is the potential here for a very large volume of pegmatites and lithium mineralisation. I've set the exploration department the objective to this year go out there and do your exploration and come back and tell me, do we have potential there for over 100 million tonnes of lithium resources? Now, that's not a defined resource, that's not an exploration target, that is the objective that I've set the exploration team to go and determine. Is that potential, does that potential exist on the Andover project? If it was to be the case, then over 100 million tonnes, it would put Andover in the top 10 sized lithium projects in the world, hard rock lithium projects in the world. So that's the task that's been set for them. The resources and the tools have been given to them. They've got a very large budget. They've got an initial 40,000 metres of drilling program planned, probably 30,000 metres of RC, maybe 10,000 metres of diamond drilling. As I said, the diamond drilling's underway. 12 holes are completed to date, maybe about 4,000 metres so far. So there's a lot more drilling yet to be done, and that'll be kicking off in the next. The acceleration of the drilling program will kick off as soon as those approvals have been received. There's plenty of targets out there that need to be tested. And so we're going to be spreading those drill rigs far and wide across that program, across the project area. And then we also have the nickel. And we don't want to forget about the nickel, because the nickel is actually valuable in its own right, because we've got two deposits, and both of those deposits have good high grades of nickel mineralisation. They have the Andover deposit and the Ridgeline deposit. They're located in the bottom left-hand corner or the southwest corner of that of our project area. And together those two deposits total about 6 million tonnes of resources, containing around about 100,000 tonnes of nickel plus copper plus cobalt. So two deposits discovered in the first 2 years of exploration. The nickel exploration will continue, albeit it will probably be greatly outweighed by the amount of exploration that's being done for the lithium, but we will still continue with the nickel. And that nickel, the two deposits we've identified to date, Ridgeline and Andover, located only 200 metres apart. The Andover deposit outcrops as nickel oxide at surface. The Ridgeline deposit is buried. It's a blind deposit. It was discovered by the exploration team using geophysics, so a really good discovery, because it's not exposed at surface at all. It starts at about 200 metres down below surface. So those two deposits would probably be exploited and mined by a single decline access, which would go down there and then basically turn left and right and access and then mine both of those deposits simultaneously. And certainly all of the mineralisation that we've seen there is very clean, very high quality, and produces very good concentrates. So just where to from here for the rest of the year? Well, basically on the lithium side, it's drill, drill, drill. Don't stop drilling, just drill for the rest of the year. Multiple drill rigs, 4 to 6 rigs going simultaneously. Let's see if we can identify that and confirm that there is the potential for 100 million tonnes plus of mineralisation. There's only 9 in the world, and we believe Andover potentially could be the 10th and make the top 10 in terms of large lithium projects around the world. And of course we will continue with the nickel as well. So we see that the next few months for Azure and the Andover project will be extremely busy. Thank you very much.